Bush initiated a $1 trillion tax cut and a $1 trillion war in Iraq and Afghanistan using up the Treasury. So that, in addition, he hobbled many of the social programs that allowed people to survive. So, all of these things combined, this precarious house of credit cards, which has collapsed, the housing market, which now has collapsed as people can't pay enough of their debt to stay, deregulated financial stock and bond industries and banks, which are collapsing, and a treasury that is being drained $6 billion a week for 2 losing wars. So with all of this lack of money, families are in trouble. Families depended, as they always have, on women's labor. Women's emotional labor, keeping people happy, women's domestic labor, keeping things cooked and cleaned and attractive, and women's, now these families still depend on women's labor, but women aren't there to make people happy. Men come home feeling terrible because their salaries are reduced, their conditions are deteriorated, and they want to be emotionally taken care of. But women come home exhausted, depleted, with all of the housework to do and the emotional work to do, and they're in terrible shape. 80% of mothers with children from 11 years old are in the labor force. And that's why 75% of children who are 11 years old and older come home to an empty house, which is a disaster for those children. The crimes that are most committed either by children or upon children happen in those hours between 3 o'clock and 6 when their parents or their mothers get home. So that you have a tragedy of children who are neglected and by necessity, and of a society that doesn't provide after-school care and quality child care. In fact, 85% of American infants, according to federal statistics, are in substandard daycare. What does that mean? It means that between 0 and 2, they're parked in unsafe places, watching television in wet diapers. And that's particularly crucial for our future and for families, because 0 to 2 are crucial years of brain formation. And they're not being stimulated, and they're not being taken care of, and they don't have sufficient exercise. So we're talking about a disaster for children. Children are entering primary school without the support that they need. The subsidized daycare, toddler care, after-school care, weekend care that are present in France and Germany and all over are not present. In fact, the UN, UNICEF gave a report on children's well-being, UNICEF Report 1, 2008. Of the 21 most industrialized nations, the United States comes out 20th out of 21 in everything except healthcare, where we're the 21st. Lowest of all. All this is happening, and at the same time, gender roles haven't changed very much. Women are exhausted. Men feel like they're not having the kind of reception they want, either in terms of the cleanliness of their home or the emotional availability of their wife, because 82% of child care in the home and 70% of housework is still done by women. Therefore, women's work week is 7 hours longer than men's. The family, as we knew it, of the dependent wife and children and the wage-earning male is over in America. American men, they cannot and do not support their wives and children. Women are overworked and miserable. And as one indicator of this change, women are rejecting marriage en masse. The majority of American women are now single. 2/3 of divorces are now initiated by women, which is a big change. And this is true even though women who divorce suffer an economic penalty. Half of first marriages and 60% of second marriages now end in separation or divorce that is legal. That doesn't count all the people who don't bother bringing the legal system into it when they break up. And so we're talking about a family that is over. It's also very interesting to say that in the late 60s, somebody named Moynihan had a study of the pathology of the American, what he called the American Negro family, which he attributed the problems to the fact that this was the black family. Well, all families are that way. The problem is if there's no family wage, you can't support your family. And a lot of the deal of male being in charge had to do with the fact that they supported the household. If that can't happen, that kind of family can't survive. The family would have to change. In addition, 44% of children are born outside of any marriage that ever happened. And 75% live in an arrangement that was not the original biological arrangement into which they were born. So children don't have that stability. Whatever kind of marriages they had, good or bad, there was a certain stable set of expectations that no longer happens. And a quarter of the children in America are now living in poverty, which is really scary for children. Now, France has a quarter of children that are born into poverty, but when you factor in the child care problems, the child care that they give people, they only have 5% of children in poverty. How come? France is not as wealthy a country as we. Well, partly, when you have a baby, the health insurance is all covered. French people, just everyone gets a health card. You give it to whatever doctor you go to, and if it's a long trip to get there, you get a refund for your transportation. But all the bills are paid, all the medical expenses are regulated, their health care costs less than we do because they're on big profiteers, and doctors don't get obscene amounts of money, and neither do hospital corporations. And once you have a child, you have someone assigned by the government to come and help you 2 days a week to do laundry and other things, give you some support if you want to go see a friend. Daycare for children from 0 to 3 is $1 an hour in highly qualified child care centers with medical staff present. Starting at 3, child care is free, and they have 100% of French toddlers are in these child care centers where they have master's degree head teachers and trained associate's degree assistant teachers, and where you can bring your child at 7 in the morning, pick your child up at 7 at night, clean and fed 3 meals. Because when you get there, you're put into your outfit of presentation. The French are really big into their clothes, is put in your little locker, and when you're ready to go home, you have that same clean outfit. None of those things are present for American children, so that people are in trouble not only because their women, the wives are working, but because the wives are working and there is nothing for the children and nothing for the families while they're working. You know, if you were in France, as soon as you get a child, you get an allowance of $430 a month, and then that doubles if you have 2 children, and it triples if you have 3 children. We just, we don't have anything like that. And that's really sad. One of the things that's hurting families is that prices for child care are outrageous, And I should say another thing is that if in France, if you're born to a teen mother or somebody's had child abuse problems, a social worker is assigned to your family for 5 years to make sure that that family has the support that they need. That's the same in all the Scandinavian countries as well as Holland and Belgium, and is similar in Germany. So Americans whose families break apart on a level unknown elsewhere, and part of the reason it's unknown because people don't have a support, there's too many tensions, there's too much responsibility. They can't support themselves and their children, so that they're fracturing under these pressures